A three-person crew on a mission to Mars faces an impossible choice when an unplanned passenger jeopardizes the lives of everyone on board. Hi, and welcome to the channel, Cinema Recaps. Today we'll be recapping the 2021 science fiction thriller film called Stowaway. Stowaway is a story about a moral quandary that ends with sacrifice. After taking off from Earth, the hand-picked, highly trained team of astronauts, Commander Marina Barnett, biologist David Kim, and medical researcher Zoe Levinson embark on a 2-year scientific mission to discover planet Mars. However, in their attempt to make the celestial body habitable and find a possible new home for mankind, the crew is not alone. Now, with the flight past the critical point of no return and the fuel and oxygen resources depleting, Marina makes a shocking discovery. The hidden, unconscious, and wounded fourth passenger, Michael Adams. Suddenly, having enough oxygen to breathe becomes the #1 priority. And while faced with an agonizing ethical dilemma, someone has to die. The question is, who? So let's dive into the story, but before we start, don't forget to hit that like button and also subscribe to our channel to get updated with all the latest videos. The movie centers on the three-person crew of the Kingfisher, medical researcher Zoe, the ship's commander Marina, and biologist David, who find their mission to Mars in jeopardy. It starts out hopeful as the crew of the Kingfisher get comfortable for the long haul, joking with each other and establishing a friendly working dynamic. Medical researcher Zoe Levinson banters with biologist David Kim, while the steely commander Marina Barnett leads the trio. Their craft research station is tied via lengthy cables to the main hull of the Kingfisher, as the huge contraption spins to create a form of artificial gravity, allowing the crew to live fairly normal day-to-day lives. Unfortunately, the journey is thrown into jeopardy when they discover a member of the ground crew, Michael Adams, is still on board. His presence ruins the meticulously planned mission as resources start to diminish. They're all faced with truly impossible decisions as they scramble to stay in control of the situation. It's not until around 18 minutes into the Netflix original that Michael's presence is discovered by Marina when she spots blood dripping from the ceiling. His harness has snagged on some of the wiring before the unconscious engineer comes crashing down into the main craft. Eventually, Michael wakes up in the understandable panic that anyone would find themselves in if they had accidentally been brought along on a 2-year-long mission to Mars. After Zoe manages to calm him down, Michael explains that he was tasked with arming the second-stage firing pins, a job he clearly completed, otherwise the Kingfisher would never have taken off. But he wasn't buckled into his safety harness properly, which meant he fell sometime before takeoff and was knocked unconscious. Clearly, someone was cutting corners during the final flight checks because Michael wasn't discovered until 12 hours into the journey. Unfortunately for him, it's too late for them to head back home, even though he's panicking about leaving his little sister unattended, adding some extra emotional stakes into an already incredibly tense situation. There's a brief moment of paranoia in Stowaway about Michael, with Marina asking the rest of the ground team if there's any possibility the engineer snuck aboard purposefully to try to sabotage the mission. The commander even debates restraining him before eventually settling down and realizing that Michael himself isn't knowingly trying to cause trouble. Don't expect a third-act twist where he's revealed to be an extraterrestrial threat or a murderous serial killer a la Sunshine. This is a story about resilience in the face of defeat, not an epic science fiction adventure. Shortly after he recovers from his injury sustained during launch, Michael asks Marina the question we'd all been thinking: why they can't just turn the Kingfisher around and go back to Earth. She tells him they don't have enough fuel to do so, and this is scientifically accurate. Director Joe Penna, who co-wrote the script with Ryan Morrison, spoke with NASA, former astronauts, and other space experts to ensure accuracy. There's no friction in space, he told Wired. A lot of people think that space travel is like car travel, where if you're not accelerating, you can just stop, turn around, and start accelerating the other way. You only bring enough fuel for adjustments in space. Because if you bring 1 pound of rocket fuel, you need 2 pounds of rocket fuel underneath that to just get up into space. Every single gram counts, and your margins are tiny, tiny, tiny. With Michael already using up unexpected oxygen and fuel by being on board during launch, the Kingfisher can't just turn around. The other unintended consequence is that he damaged the ship's CDRA, carbon dioxide removal assembly, to be precise, meaning they can't recycle the carbon dioxide they're emitting. It's a sticky situation, and while David tries to use algae to scrub the carbon dioxide and create more oxygen for the four of them, half of the batch fails. They only have enough oxygen for 3 people to survive the trip to Mars, and as Marina tells Zoe and David, they'll end up asphyxiating on carbon dioxide a few weeks before they land. The only solution is to kill Michael. But after protests from Zoe, Marina allows 10 days for them to try and find a solution on board, as every day that he's still there is a danger to all of them. She warns them not to tell Michael about it, but guess what happens? Only 3 days later, Michael finds out from David, who gives him a painless way of killing himself to save the rest of the crew. Understandably, Michael isn't keen on the idea, especially as he has a sister back on Earth who's alone without him. He does seem to come around to the idea, but Zoe sees him before he does it, and after telling a story of how she survived an unsurvivable situation 12 years ago, he decides against it. Zoe instead thinks they should see if there's enough oxygen left in the tank tethered 450 meters above the Kingfisher. The tank was used for the launch, and there's no way of telling how much is left without a perilous journey up the tethers. Marina can't do it as she's got a fractured arm after Michael fell on her when he was discovered, and Michael isn't trained up, so it's left to Zoe and David. They manage to get up there, and there's more than 500 liters of liquid oxygen left in the tank, plenty for 2 extra people, and it means they've got enough for the 4 of them. Unfortunately, with 1 canister full, a solar storm warning sounds, and they only have 20 minutes to get to the safety of the ship. Zoe has to abandon filling up the 2nd canister, and on their way back to the ship, she loses control of the full canister and it floats off into space. They get back into the ship, but with the tank leaking above from the aborted filling up, they have limited time before all the oxygen is gone. The solar storm hits, and the radiation will prove deadly to anybody exposed to it. With the storm set for the last 4 hours, Michael volunteers to sacrifice himself to get a full canister for the other 3 crew members to survive. He's untrained though, and as Zoe notes, if he doesn't make it back, one of them dies too. Marina can't go because of her injuries, and David volunteers, but Zoe stops him and makes him promise to get back home to his wife and have a family. Zoe heads back out onto the tethers, and despite suffering the effects of the solar storm radiation, she manages to get to the oxygen tank, fill up the canister, and bring it back to the ship. Sharing a final look with Marina, Zoe sits on the hull and stares out at Mars as she dies. The ending of Stowaway is a relatively quiet affair, choosing to focus on Zoe's words from earlier on in the film, where she explains the mission would truly give my life meaning beyond anything I could imagine. It's a peaceful end for Zoe, who sits on top of the ship looking at Mars while she's surrounded by a swirling array of colorful radiation, slowly dying as Volker Bertelsmann's score reaches an emotional crescendo. Since we never once get a peek into Zoe's personal life, aside from the fact that she went to Yale University, it makes sense why she was the one who felt she could do what was necessary to save the team. Her caring and compassionate nature as a doctor revolved around helping others rather than herself, bringing the story to a close. Since Stowaway ends on a shot of Mars in the distance, it's left to the audience to imagine that the surviving crew members made it there alive. We hear her earliest story in voiceover about applying to the program for a joke in the closing moments. She said, "But now I realize that this is one of those rare opportunities that could truly give my life meaning beyond anything I could imagine." She's managed to save the crew, and presumably they make it safely to Mars to carry out the mission of sustaining life on the planet, the first steps to being able to call Mars a second home for humanity. Stowaway ends before we see the crew reach Mars though, so it depends on how positive your outlook is, whether they make it there, or if Zoe's sacrifice was all for nothing. For stars Anna Kendrick and Daniel Day Kim, they want to believe that the crew does make it safely to Mars. "I think some of the crew makes it to Mars," Kendrick joked, referring to her character's fate. Kim added, I think thanks to the actions of some of our crew, the rest of the crew will make it. We hope you enjoyed our video today. If you did, then smash that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with all the latest videos. Take care.